I never really got into fighting games as a kid. I didn't want to sit down and learn a bunch of combos because I didn't have anyone to play with, and the people who did want to play just got stomped, so they didn't want to play either, eventually. It felt worthless. If a fighting game somehow made its way to me, I would just play through the story, unlock everything, see if I could beat the highest level CPU, and never play it again. Things that did interest me about fighting games, though, was the music, which had to be designed to match the intended intensity or general good vibes, stages that are either booming with life or hint at a large world outside from what you're seeing in front of you, bombastic designs, which all find different ways to say pick me, with either their exaggerated personalities or backgrounds tied to real-world countries of origins. It allows a person to imprint themselves onto a character, whether they like being a dick because it's a video game, or they resonate with the character's motivation, or their design, or their history. I like fighting game stories. They're usually simple and dumb, so if you're picking up another game in the series, you know what's going on. Unless you're fucking Guilty Gear, the Backyard, the Sanctus Maximus Populi, the Baptisma 13 incident. Bedman? Does it have a question mark because you're supposed to say it like that? Like the question mark is part of the bed's name? Kengan Asura and Omega are not out here breaking the mold. It's not a fighting game, but it's a manga clearly inspired by them. That and the competitive world of martial arts, so it's pretty functionally similar since the story feels as if it's in service of making the fights happen instead of the fights resulting from the story. This isn't a bad thing either, because I think what it tries to do, it does really well. Despite seeming pretty standard on the surface, it still managed to become one of my favorite battle manga. Spoilers are ahead, by the way. The story takes place in Japan, where a young man named Tokita Oma is fighting for what he claims is no other reason than to become the strongest in the world. There's more to it than that, but it doesn't get much deeper, trust me. The world's elites, which in this world are parodies of our world's companies, settle multi-million and billion-dollar disputes with underground street fights known as Kengan matches. In these fights, only two rules apply. Fighters can only use their body to fight, and a winner is declared when a participant gives up, loses consciousness, or is killed. The level of skill in these fights are higher than any public world-class martial arts tournaments. The fighters are superhuman. Even the jobbers who get beat by top-tier combatants in a couple of hits could potentially defeat the apexes of our world. We watch Oma go through the usual shonen thing. He gets recruited in the Kengan matches after beating a man half to death in the street because that happened to be Hideki Nogi's representative for the fights. Nogi hires a salaryman named Yamashita Kazuo to basically babysit him. Kazuo acts as the "whoa, he's doing that thing I know about? That's incredible!" type of announcer trope, who provides a bit of depth where other characters can't so the audience won't get lost. Oma's got a power-up that comes at a heavy cost, every new opponent he faces increases in difficulty, and he has a guy he wants to kill for revenge for his father figure. It's shonen shit, bro. He says it's not for that, but nah, it is what it is, even if he's trying to convince himself otherwise. I guess you could call him the Ryu of the story, except he's more of an asshole, so I guess he's more of the Kazuya. I'm sure what I've said hasn't impressed you so far. It wouldn't impress me either. It seems pretty standard. What I like about Kengan is the shine it gives to every character. Sekibayashi, not to be confused with the marvelous Sekibayashi, is a professional wrestler and takes the showmanship of his job into his underground fighting career. He basks in attention, tanks hits for his personal narrative in a fight, and uses the concept of selling hits in his fighting style. Professional wrestlers are performers in real life. They sell a punch taken to the gut to a crowd of people to make it feel real. Sekibayashi does something similar in that he doesn't fully reveal how hurt he is for dramatic, off-putting moments of relentless aggression. Video games have the benefit of taking wrestling moves and turning them into real feats of human brutality. Sekibayashi doesn't emulate real-world wrestling. He emulates King from Tekken. He emulates Zangief from Street Fighter. When he bear hugs someone, they're going to be crushed. When he suplexes someone, they may never walk again. While reading his fights, I can't help but think about how he fits the grappler archetype perfectly. Like a video game character, I feel like I know what he's capable of. Characters are sort of known quantities once you get to know them. All of the more fleshed out fighters have a moveset and style that you can pick up on as you read. When you get that taste of what everyone can do in a fight, it starts to become really easy to imagine them in fights against each other. I know power scaling can be lame, but this manga seems built for it, the way it cements different fighters in my head as consistent people who are constantly improving on their foundational understanding of fighting. Yorezuka Saw Pang is a practitioner of Lethwei, known as Burmese boxing. Burmese boxing is one of the most deadly combat sports in the world because it involves using hands, feet, knees, elbows, and headbutts. Lethwei is also referred to as the art of the 9 limbs, which is fucking badass, dude. It's safe to say that Burmese boxer can take a beating and deliver brutal punishment. With headbutts being part of Lethwei's rule sets, of course it would also be a part of Saw Pang's arsenal, but remember, these fighters are superhuman. Sopang has the strongest skull in the world through forcing his body to adapt to constant blows from the head at a young age. Now, his strength, upbringing, and explosively optimistic personality come together to form his most iconic move, the Hammer of Burma. Sopang is my favorite character, and I attribute it to his fighting style. Every time he's in a fight, I'm waiting for the Hammer of Burma, which is usually a match-deciding move. When he manages to get his opponent stuck in a hold right in front of his head, I freak out. That's when I realize, oh my god! This is sports. I'm a fan of this fictional fighter. I love when he shows up. I listen closely to what he has to say. I pay attention when he's on the page. I root for him to win every fight he's in. This manga turned me into a fan of a fictional combat sport. There's a similar feeling with all these characters. Eventually, I know who they are. I know their tendencies. I get curious to know how they grew from last time they fought. None of them feel like they have an exceptional amount of depth, if I'm being honest, but it doesn't matter. They be fighting good, and that be fucking cool, dude. I didn't even mention the art yet, which I believe does an incredible job at describing these fights with real weight and motion to the imagery by playing with the bodies and expression beyond what they're capable of portraying on their own. Like, when I see this guy go Iron Breaker, I'm like, holy fuck, that punch launched like a rocket, thanks to the prominent line of action directly into what used to be a face. Faces get twisted and distorted. If you've ever pushed yourself to the limit doing something you love that's physical, it's kind of like that. Almost all of these fighters are not interested in the politics around them. They're here to compete, similar to a lot of top athletes in any sport. Yeah, it's nice to support yourself and live lavishly, but when your needs are met, you seek self-fulfillment. For these fighters, that comes from the lethal race it is to become the absolute strongest. Along with the wild movements and facial expressions, the Kengan team also focuses on having a base of realism. Momentum shouldn't come from nowhere. If someone's going to throw a punch that can break through solid concrete, then it better have a believable starting point. To an extent, anyway. This is exactly what fighting game animators and directors do, though. They take reality and exaggerate. They try to understand the importance of what to prioritize in any given martial art, and it's clear that everything is given as much love as possible. It's sweet. They really enjoy the stuff they've surrounded themselves in. Right, so the main creators of Kengan. I could get some things wrong because this is not a super popular series, so please correct me if I'm misunderstanding something. Yabako Sandrovich, the writer of the manga and former martial artist, Daromeon, the illustrator and dork of the crew, and Kobayashi Sho, the current editor with 18 years of experience in martial arts. These creators have a clear love for everything martial arts and fighting games. There was even a little Street Fighter crossover where Daromeon drew some thick-ass muscly thighs on Chun-Li, and whew, as you should, by the way. Daromeon is kind of really good at drawing yaoi, too. like, dude, look at this. This is so fucking gay. I wish this was real. God, hell. I'm just going to assume this is Daromeon's input because it feels like something an ex-NEET would put in their work. Plus, he said he has a habit of cross-dressing. Guys, I got a real question. What is cross-dressing? I'm a visual learner, by the way. Do you know the anime trope of a hopeless pervert who experiences constant blood loss from just imagining women naked? Kengan got a straight woman who does the exact same thing and goes a step further, imagining characters in these homoerotic situations. Look at this dude. Sorry, I spent too long talking about this, I'll move on. Kengan Asura also has a sequel manga titled Kengan Omega, which is currently being released weekly. In it, we follow a new protagonist. It's pretty cool to witness another climb, as they establish the main character is very different from the previous, not as edgy when he starts out, that's certain. Through his eyes, we can see the new fighters make their statement, and old fighters appear as legends. There's a mythical air that's applied to the fighters we know from Asura, and by having a rookie just starting out in the Kengan fights, we are allowed to cheer for them and witness more of their victories than we could previously when our main character could just beat most of them. When we see the old guard fight, we notice they fix mistakes, they change tendencies, they improve. With the great job Kengan does attaching you to certain characters as if they were real athletes and personalities, it becomes way more hype to see characters return. It's exactly like the release of a new fighting game. Who got cut? Whose story continues? Is my favorite character trash now? It encourages the reader to speculate and fantasize about potential outcomes and matchups. It's just fun, dude. Kengan's a pretty good read if you think you can get into battle manga, and I think it's one of the best ones with that flavor. Sorry if I sound different, I'm recording this way after the fact. If you're not interested in the manga, it's been stated that all of Asura, the first manga of the two in the series, is getting adapted onto an anime on Netflix. It looks as bad as you'd expect out of a niche property Netflix exclusive, but actually, no, it doesn't look bad! The dumpy 3D models are an artistic choice that lends itself to being similar to something like a Street Fighter. They allocate their resources really well. I'm certain that 3D models were made to save time and money, but it didn't skimp out on the fights. The choreography translates the intensity of the manga panels pretty well. So well that there's a pretty popular reaction series on YouTube where a couple of fighters react to this show and just name off moves. The closest fight to reality seems to be the Okubo versus Agito fight. It's just a really solid MMA exchange. It still goes a bit into fantasy, but it's insanely easy to follow and relate to real life. Blows in fights are paired with schlocky, video gamey sound effects. The music is hype, and I'm into the voice actors for English and Japanese. For the most part, there's some cool stuff that you can only see in Japanese, like the funny English that they like to do sometimes, and Saw Pang is way better in Japanese, trust me. Also, the anime puts a lot of care into the arena for fights. Water flows from the concrete ceiling on this abandoned building as the rain falls. The crowd murmurs as the fighters prepare. The Kengan Coliseum. It has entrance music, explosive announcers, a roaring crowd, dark blue coloring, and light shows that really capture that pro wrestling vibe. Shit is awesome. But those are the only two places I feel like it's worth talking about. Sorry. If they keep going and adapt Omega, there'll be some cool places in it though. Either way, I mega appreciate it. Shit is incredible. I'm Frogwater. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment or two, because I really like reading those when I'm bored at work. Alright, see you in a week or two.